This game is rated M for mature. Hey there everybody, redxparasite here, and welcome to the bonus video for my Let's Play of Bayonetta. So in this video, I'll be covering some of the things that I did not cover during the main playthrough. I'll be starting off with the gallery here. Interestingly enough, this gallery is actually shared between play files, so if you've completed one play file, you'll have access to all of this stuff, even if you start a new file on something else. So let's start with some of the concept art. Just gonna get right into this because I know this is gonna take a while. So got some early sketches of Bayonetta here. I'm gonna flip through these pretty quickly. If you want to pause and look at them in more detail, then feel free. Oh, did not hit the button there. But yeah, these pre-sketches actually look fairly close to what she ended up looking like, so not too much of a difference here. Moving into Jean. I have to say, I really do like her main outfit that she wears for most of the game. So there's the nun outfit. There's the old outfit that Jean wore. Oop, kind of skipped by that pretty quickly. Panther and Lynx forms, Crow and Owl, Bat and Moth. These are their watches. And some of these are actually kind of spoiling some of the costumes that I was going to be showing a little bit later on. So the Wii U and Switch versions, have these additional Nintendo costumes in them. So here's Luca. There's him as a child. Cereza. Her braids are a lot bigger in this than they actually ended up being in the game. There's Balder. And actually, here's probably one of the more interesting things, is that Rodan was originally named Mephisto. There's Enzo. So, let's see, how far along are we? 9 out of 14 pages. Some of the Vigrid soldiers and people. Now we're getting into some of the different enemies. These are actually some pretty nice pieces of artwork of the enemies here. So now we're into the bosses. Actually, stuff on the right there is... Okay, those are the things that it attacks you with. Thought it might have been an alternate design there for a second, but that is not the case. Here are some of the summons. And I think that is it. Okay, so that was it for the characters. Here's some of the background stuff. Lakeshore, coffin in the water. I'm not sure if these are organized chronologically in terms of the game's presentation or not. Train cabin, Vigrid church, Enzo's car. So far they look like they're fairly chronological. Actually, that's one thing that was different between the promo stuff and the final game. Those statues ended up actually being humanoid instead of horses. Kind of like the horse designs, actually. Here are the treasure chests. It's interesting to see how much of the stuff in this art, actually made it into the final game, relatively in the same form that it was here. This is obviously a little different, the interior of that armored vehicle, but for the most part, a lot of the stuff matches up with how it appears in the final game. So I'm not sure if these are just some of the later art sketches after changes were made, or they just didn't change a lot. Some really nice looking art here. And actually, so I didn't know what these were in the game, but apparently they're Iron Maidens, which is fun. The elevator, entrance to Baldur's room. The Stun Perrin satellite. Which, that looks like it would be fun. Goddess rocket, and I think that's it for the backgrounds. And then the last one is object. This is a pretty short one, so these are some art sketches of some of the different kinds of weapons and other such things. So the Scarborough Fair looks like. There's Jean's weapons, All for One, and the Onyx Roses at the bottom. All the notes are in Japanese, so I unfortunately will not be able to read them for you. But these, it looks like early concepts of Shiraba and Angel Slayer. And actually looking at the concept art for Durga, it's actually pretty cool, because you might not realize it just looking at the weapon, but the claws on it are actually not, physical claws. They're actually just kind of either like a flamethrower or electricity coming out of the device that she's holding. Lieutenant Colonel Kilgore. Early concept of Odette. It's actually not blue, which is interesting. They definitely changed it to blue to make it kind of fit more with the ice aesthetic. Got some of the old guns. Here's some of the things for the torture attacks. And here are all the different accessories. I'll be going over those in a little bit. So that's what the super mirror looks like, which actually I don't think I've really shown that much. And then here are the different books and journals. And these miniature dolls kind of spoil one of the other things I was going to be talking about, which was the playable characters in this game. But again, I will get to that a little bit later. If you feel like translating some of the angelic and demonic alphabets, they give you keys. And there are certain places in the game where there is actually lettering that you could decode if you really felt like it. So there is an option here to view everything. That will just play all three of these galleries in order, and it's a video essentially, so you don't have to worry about panning through them on your own. So getting into the 3D models here, I'm going to go through these pretty quickly since there are a lot of them, but they have the standard options that you'd expect in terms of being able to zoom in and out, being able to pan and rotate the camera. So this will actually be a good time to talk about some of the costumes, because I think all of the costumes are pretty much in here as long as you have purchased the costume, which on one of my files I have. So here is the old costume, which looks like the costumes that the Umber Witches wore 500 years ago. It's a little bit different, so that Bayonetta actually stands out a little bit from them, but this one looks pretty nice. There is, of course, the nun costume from the beginning and end of the game. So there's, Cereza as a child. And then this is one of her during a summon. And this is the same outfit as the first one, but I guess she just looks serious. Super serious. Look at how serious she is. I also have some renders of her with different weapons. You can actually see she's wearing like really long boots. In fact, they're so long that I'd almost hesitate to call them boots. But here's Odette. And I'm not sure if you can actually get these as costumes in the game or not. Now, one thing that I didn't really go over much are the Umbran elegances that can go along with the respective weapons. And this will change your appearance a little bit. Like, this is actually a perfect example. So you can see how she has a tail in this one, kind of made out of fire. So that is the Umbran elegance associated with Durga. But they don't actually change her outfit like the previous models did. Okay, here's this one. Like, I'm pretty sure that they don't actually change your outfits like that in game. But here are some of the Nintendo exclusive ones. So here's Princess Peach. Here's the Princess Daisy one. What I like about these two costumes is that they will actually change some of your Wicked Weaves so that they're actually Bowser's arms and legs. And, you know, it'll make a corresponding sound too, which is cool. Here's the Master Sword. Actually, well, there's the Master Sword on the back. So here's the Link costume. And that actually, you have to, it changes the weapon for you. So you can't actually equip, I think it's just your hands. So, like, you are forced to use a sword for that. Of course, here's the Samus one. The fun thing about this one is that you can play around with the visor. So you can kind of put it up and down at will during cutscenes. Beyond those, these are actually the ones that will be in any version of the game if you get it. So here's a Komachi. Some traditional Japanese garb. There are 3 different variants here with different colors. I think this one's probably my favorite. Then we'll get on to some of the not so great ones, in my opinion. Not really the biggest fan of the PE uniforms. Just kind of eh. Although, this is probably one of my favorite outfits, so Bayonetta also has a version of the dark costume that Jean wears for most of the game, so I use this one a lot. So this one, I believe, is the one that reflects what the other Umbra Witches wore around 500 years ago. And then they have some other different ones, which are kind of like tracksuits or spandex. This one, I think, has pom-poms along with it, depending on what kind of weapon you're using with your hands. Or maybe it's this one. I mean, this one obviously has the pom-poms, but here's the last one. It's a bit revealing. So Bayonetta by far has the most models, I think. Yeah, Jean's list is not nearly as long. So here's her in her normal outfit. One of the little touches that I appreciate about the gallery stuff here is that they will play the appropriate themes along with whatever you're looking at. So in this case, it's playing red and black since we're looking at Jean's models. So here's Jean's old outfit. She wears in the Battle for the Umbran Throne. Of course, the nun outfit, which looks pretty much exactly the same as Bayonetta's. I think the only major difference that you can tell, aside from maybe her face, is that her glasses are red, whereas Bayonetta's are black. That's all for Jean. Got some more of the supporting cast. Here's Luca. He's actually doing an objection pose right there, so I can just imagine that he's Phoenix Wright for a moment. Just put a little objection on screen there. Of course, there's Cereza, which is pretty similar to the child model, although she's not wearing the black dress. And the reason for that is the one in the Bayonetta grouping is for when you get hit by one of Jubileus's attacks, and it actually transforms you into your child self. So that's the distinction there. Here's Rodon. Of course, our favorite character, Enzo. Got some other various assorted humans. So these include the Emperor Witches that we saw during certain points of the game, and I think most of the rest of them are just citizens of Vigrid. Now, the interesting thing is that these are all apparently normal citizens, but as you can tell, a lot of them look like they're either clergymen or nuns, and I'm sure that was, entirely intentional on the part of the developers. So look at the cone head here, and then we have some of the security officers. We're a little over halfway, I think, through the models. This one's pretty short, so here's Panther Within. One thing that is kind of interesting about these is that they're very shiny for whatever reason. So you wouldn't really expect like a panther or a crow here to be quite that iridescent. Alright, here's where we get into some of the enemies. So the background's different. So there are affinities. We actually have a bunch of different variants of these. It's got the ones that are wearing the... they're all wearing pretty much the same thing, but we have the ones with the horns, the ones with the halberds, ones with the sousaphones. Ooh, ball and chain. And then a flaming affinity, Those were fun enemies to deal with. But we have the two variants of applauds. And I think this has most of the enemies in it. So Ardor's very shiny with this lighting here. These are actually some pretty nice models. It kind of reminds me of the trophies in Smash Brothers and just kind of panning around and looking at those. Now, I don't think this enemy appears normally in the game, this kind of beloved. I think it's only in the Angel Slayer mode, so I don't think you'll encounter that one normally when playing the game. So we've got deer and decorations with their very gold wings. One cool thing about being able to look at the models is that you can actually take some time to appreciate the design. Here, for example, these enchants, we didn't really get a good look at them during the game, so you can kind of appreciate some of the details that you wouldn't really be able to see because you're busy fighting things and trying not to get hit. And of course, we have the golem, which is going to have a whole bunch of different forms. It's also very shiny and reflective. Here's the dragon form. Who doesn't like dragons? Got the arms. The crow. The centipede form. And I think I actually called this a lizard. But it is actually a spider. Although, okay, it does have 8 legs. So that is technically accurate. So we have Grace and Glory here. These were... they're pretty tough sometimes. Although... they weren't nearly as bad as their... lighter counterparts. Gracious and Glorious. Some of my favorite enemies here, Inspireds. If you couldn't tell, I was being very sarcastic there. Not the biggest fan of these guys. But we're almost at the end. Here are the cars. I still think it's hilarious that they managed to come up with a car enemy. Got the Joys. And last but not least, Kinship. Okay. The bosses also look pretty cool. So we've got the 4 cardinal virtues. So here's Fortitudo. Temperantia. What's really cool about this is you can actually see its different weak points on the sides of its hip, on its back, and then the ones near its shoulder joints. Here's Justicia. And one thing that you can actually see a lot better on this model here that you can't really see as well in the fight is that it actually has these kind of crystal protrusions coming out of it. And its main body is kind of all rainbowy and light. Series Sapientia. My personal favorite cardinal virtue. Just in terms of design in the fight. Here's Father Balder. One thing that is really cool, small detail, is that, you know, when you're turning it, the feathers coming off of his back actually kind of move too. So here are some of the Sequi. I actually called this Fortitude. The proper name for it is Courage. All the other ones I got right, though. So here's Temperance. Here's Justice, which actually, cool little detail about this. It only has, you know, like the 3 faces on the front and the 1 child tentacle. Its back actually doesn't have anything else on it. And then here's Prudence. And finally, game is taking a while to load this one. Jubileus. You notice, look at how big that halo is on the back. Okay, so last one are the demons. So these are all of our summons. So here are the punch wicked weaves, the kick ones, and we get into the summons. So here's Hecaton Care, Phantasmaranier, Malthus, Scolopendra, and then here are the corresponding ones for Jeanne. So they're all white since her hair is white. And so her pact is actually with Madama Styx and not Madama Butterfly. Although, you know, the Wicked Weaves look very similar. So yeah, for the most part, all of them look pretty much exactly the same, but they're just made out of white hair instead of black hair. So and of course, here's Queen Sheba. One detail that I really like about this, and I didn't point this out during the actual finale episode, is that as you can see, since there's black hair and white hair in the summon here, Bayonetta actually did not summon Queen Sheba by herself. Jean actually helped her out with that one. So this here is a playable character that, or actually it's a little devil, which is kind of tied to one of the playable characters. I'll get into that in just a little bit. So the last thing from the gallery that we have to look at is the jukebox. This right here is actually that dance video to Let's Dance Boys that we saw at the end of the game. So no need to play through that again. But the jukebox is, you know, pretty much exactly what you'd expect. It has pretty much all of the soundtrack in the game, and they're relatively in order that you'll encounter them throughout the game. So it does have some of these shorter tracks too. Now, I'm not going to go through every single one of these, but this is a very nice thing to have. So I'll just go to one of the best tracks. Okay, so I guess while I'm here, I can talk about some of the other things that there are in the game. So first things first, I'll talk about some of the difficulty modes. So I was playing on normal, and there are a total of 5 different difficulties. They're very easy, easy, normal, hard, and then non-stop infinite climax. And so in order to unlock hard mode, you have to complete all of the chapters in the game on normal, and to unlock the non-stop infinite climax, you have to complete all of the chapters on hard. So some of the things that are changed between the different difficulties are the enemy speed. So for the easier difficulties, obviously enemies are slower. They take longer pauses between attacks. So for the higher difficulties, you know, enemies will be more aggressive, and I think the attacks also come out faster, so you have less time to dodge them. On very easy, your health will actually regenerate over time. So you don't have to do anything special for that. It'll just kind of happen. On easy and very easy, there is an accessory called the Immortal Marionette that is automatically equipped to your inventory, which I think will save you from death at least once. You can unequip that if you want, but you'll have to go into the menu and do that manually because it's turned on by default. And then lastly, easy and very easy both have an automatic mode that you can play with one hand. I have never tried it, but that is something that you can do if you so choose. The last major difference between the difficulty settings is that on Infinite Climax, enemies have more health than the other modes, and Witch Time is actually disabled. So that's fun. Getting into the playable characters, there are 3 playable characters in the game. One of them is Bayonetta, of course. The second one, as you might have suspected from the fact that there are multiple costumes and Wicked Weaves for all of the summons, is Jean. In order to unlock Jean, you have to beat normal mode with at least Platinum on all chapters. So this does not include Angel Slayer and the Secret Boss. And she actually has some notable differences in how she plays compared to Bayonetta. The first is that her Wicked Weaves do 1.5 times more damage than Bayonetta's, but consequently, she also takes 1.5 damage from enemies. She can also dodge non-stop, so whereas Bayonetta, I think, has a limit of 4 dodges in a row, kind of does this high jump, and you can't, dodge for a little while after that. Jean can just dodge as much as she wants. Probably the biggest thing that you'll notice is that Witch Time can only be activated using the Moth Within, or the equivalent of Bat Within. So the normal timing for Bayonetta to activate Witch Time does not work, just at all for Jean. But as a reward for that, Witch Time attacks are 2 times the combo score instead of 1.5 for Bayonetta. And then, of course, you have the White Wicked Weaves, and all of Jean's weapons have different names, which I showed off most of those during that one Alfheim verse in the final chapter. So the other playable character is called Zero, and he's a really interesting character. In order to unlock him, you have to complete Angel Slayer, that mode. And the way that he works is that pretty much any hit will knock him down to 1 HP. So I think you'll be able to take 3 hits if you have the absolute maximum amount of health, which is 8,000. But yeah, it's a very interesting mechanic, and obviously I haven't unlocked him before, so I have not played as him. But the last thing to talk about is some of the unlockable weapons. So I'm actually going to back out of the gallery here so I can kind of talk about some of those. So the first one is the handguns. So these are the same handguns from the that are used in the prologue. So they are actually weaker than the Scarborough Affair. So if you want to challenge yourself a little bit more, you can use the handguns. They essentially function the same way as the Scarborough Affair. I think all of their combos are essentially the same. So then the next one are Sai Feng. These are essentially 2 revolvers that are connected like a nunchuck. And in order to unlock that, you have to complete 100 chapters on normal difficulty or above. Now, let's see. Can I actually change my weapons from here? I don't think you can in this game. It is an option in Bayonetta 2, but I think all you can do in the menu in this game is change your costume. So, in order to do those 100 chapters, that is a lot. So what you can do is you can do a playthrough on normal, and then a playthrough on hard and infinite climax, but you're probably going to have to grind at least some. So the ones that I recommend doing that with are either the boss chapters or the prologue, because those are both pretty fast. So if you need to grind for Halos, I'd probably recommend going for the boss chapters, since you get a lot of Halos from those. But otherwise, it just kind of takes a while to unlock that. So the next one is Bazillions. So these are kind of 4 laser guns. They are slightly more powerful than the Scarborough Fair, I believe. In order to unlock that, you have to complete all of the chapters in the game on hard. Then there's Pillow Talk, which is a green energy sword, kind of looks like a lightsaber, and it pretty much acts like Shiraba, but it does have the advantage of when you charge it up, which I didn't really do that much with Shiraba, it is more powerful once it's fully charged. And in order to unlock that, you have to complete the game on non-stop infinite climax. So the last one is a weapon called Rodan, so it's not the character, and is 4 golden halo-like rings that are worn on the wrists and feet. One important thing to note about that is you can't equip anything else when you're wearing Rodan. It will go on both your hands and your feet, so you can't mix and match it with any other weapons. And you get that for beating the secret boss fight, which is Rodan. So, pretty much gone over the costume changes both in the models section of the gallery, and kind of went over them briefly there.
No matter how much you ask, I'm not putting a chainsaw on your arm. So what do you want?
So, the last thing that I have to talk about before I wrap this up is some of the things in the Gates of Hell that I didn't really go around to get. So, I explained the alt weapons before. You can buy these if you want to equip the same weapon on both your hands and your feet. Probably the biggest thing that I did not cover at all in the main LP from the Gates of Hell here are the accessories. So these do a variety of different things. This one allows you to divide yourself into multiple beings. So that depletes the magic gauge. This one allows you to summon little devils, which will kind of help you attack enemies. Also costs magic. This one will absorb attacks on your behalf, but I think it will essentially drain your magic meter if you do. This one will automatically activate Witch Time, which will expend magical power. The one thing that I think is interesting about this, I believe it will still work if you are playing as Jean, or if you're playing on Nonstop Infinite Climax. So you can still activate Witch Time with this, even if you can't activate it through normal means. This one I find particularly useful. This one will allow you to recover some HP by taunting an enemy. Now, I didn't really taunt enemies much during the main playthrough, but if you do taunt enemies, it'll essentially enrage them and make them more aggressive and attack you more frequently. So this one will do an auto counterattack, but you will not be able to activate Witch Time while you're wearing it. And then I forget exactly what this one does. I think it makes enemies automatically enraged, so even if you don't taunt them. But it has the benefit of increasing your combo score, if I remember correctly. And then this last one allows you to nullify an attack if you push the left stick in the direction of the enemy right when you're getting attacked. So there are some more ones that I do not have unlocked on this file, so can't really go over those since I don't have them unlocked, but that's pretty much it. Now, the Rodant's Treasure section, this is where you can buy those Umbran Elegances for the various weapons. And then this is also where you buy all of the costumes. And of course, you get access to buy those once you have beaten the game at least once. So the last thing that is not in my Gates of Hell shop right now is the Platinum ticket. And this is how you access the secret boss where you fight Rodin. In order to get that to appear, you have to accumulate 10 million halos on one of your save files. This includes anything that you've spent, so don't worry about saving up 10 million at one time. It's just how many you've accumulated over your playtime. And the ticket costs 999,999. So I believe that will about cover it. The last thing, of course, as you can see right there on your screen, there is a kind of separate mode here called Angel Slayer, and I decided that instead of trying to do like a set of videos on that, since it is kind of a long and involved and difficult mode, I'm thinking I'll probably do a stream of that at some point. So I'm not going to put anything about that in here, but you can just check my Twitter for whenever I decide to do that. If you're coming to this video farther in the future, after I do that stream, I will probably try to upload it to YouTube here. So hopefully at the end of this video, there will eventually be a link to that. So I think that will do it. So thank you very much for watching this bonus episode of Bayonetta. I've been redxparasite. signing out.